Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the life cycle of a domain. It's important that you understand this because this is the most significant. It is one of the most significant aspects of a PBN because you're going to be acquiring domains. So you need to understand because what exactly happens. What exactly happens to a domain in its life cycle. Because you could be buying expired domains, you could be buying domains on auction, you could be using drop catching, you could be buying it from third-party providers, brokers. So you need to really understand this aspect if you're going to be doing any serious PBN SEO. Okay, so on top we have a simple diagram, and over here we have a more sort of detailed explanation of that. These images are not by me, they're courtesy Domain Sherpa. They've done a wonderful job in explaining this, and if you have time, I highly recommend you read their blog post about this topic because they have it explained really well. But I'm going to make my effort now and try and explain this to you. Okay, so when a domain, a .com name always starts off as availability, right? It's available. Okay, let's understand one more thing, that we have a central registry, and then you have registrars under them. So the central registry is the one, the internet that sort of controls everything, and then it gives the authority to different registrars like GoDaddy and Namecheap and all these registrars all over the world to sort of accept domain name registrations, and they all check when you go in there and you try and look for a domain. If you're registering a new domain and see if the domain name is taken, it just checks against the central database, and so that's how it works. So, but the registrar is the one that sort of holds on to the domain name. You're not really you never really own a domain, so you're just like buying it, you're sort of renting it. You're not buying it, you're just renting it, leasing it out for a 1-year period or a 2-year period or a 5-year period, and then you sort of have to remember to renew it or put it on auto renewal and make sure that your credit card doesn't expire, because that happens a lot of the time, and you sort of lose your domain. If you miss the mail from them, they do give you sort of a reminder. We'll talk about that in a bit. So let's get back to the life cycle. And okay, so a domain is initially available and then it becomes active. And this active period is basically when somebody comes in there and registers the domain, right? So that's when the domain is active and it belongs to that person. You can't really do anything in they can point it to whatever IP address and hosting they want and things like that. So it's active for that registered period, and that registered period of time could be 1 year, minimum 1 year. It could be as many 10-year period also, as much as 10 years. Okay, so after that, what happens over here is, let's say it's expiring on a particular date, right? And the owner of the domain is not aware that it's expiring. What happens is it goes into sort of a grace period of 0 to 45 days, and in this grace period it still belongs to that owner and it's not really being auctioned or anything as yet. So basically the domain goes into sort of a grace period. So you get, some of these registrars give you some extra time, and your site doesn't really go down. So and that's about between 0 and 45 days. It differs from different registrars. But if you forget to, so if you don't renew it within that period of time, you still sort of not, you're not aware it's expiring, and you forget to renew it after that, then what happens is the domain gets opened in an auction. So people can start bidding to buy a domain if you don't buy it after the redemption grace period or the pending delete period. So this is your redemption grace period, and you can still snap up your domain if you forget to sort of renew it in the redemption grace period, but you will be paying a premium fees for it. For example, GoDaddy I think charges $100, if you remember if you remember to renew it within the redemption grace period, and you've forgotten to renew it in the after it expired and in the grace period. So mind you, the auction is going on for this particular domain. That's how it works, but the owner doesn't really know, or for whatever reason, he can still snap it up in this redemption grace period. So you could be going out there and you can be bidding to win a particular domain in an auction, and you could win the auction, but but the domain is not yet assigned to you until it gets deleted. Right before it gets deleted, or if the owner doesn't renew it in the redemption period. So just let's give an example. You're bidding on a domain, you win the auction, you're all like super pumped up. You're like, oh, you got this really good domain for for cheap price on the auction because there weren't many people bidding for it. But you haven't yet won the domain. You need to remember that. It has to pass the redemption grace period. The original owner has to forget to renew it, and then when it gets into the pending delete phase, that's when it gets assigned to you because you won the auction. Now let's suppose nobody bids for it on the auction, right? Let's explore a scenario where it goes into auction and the domain just goes by and nobody really bids on it because it's not exciting enough or it's not valuable enough. And what happens then? Then the domain goes into a pending delete phase, which for about 5 days, and after which it drops. The domain gets deleted and it's available for anybody to grab. And that's when domain drop catching services come in. All these drop catching softwares and third-party providers, some of them run on desktop. I think it's desktop drop catcher. There's a tool called that, and then there's a bunch of. It's a big business. You can sign up to drop catch any domain by paying a basic fees. I think as much as $79 or something like that. Different drop catching providers have different fees that they charge you. And we'll talk about that, and I'll run you through some of these drop catching providers. What happens then is as soon as it gets deleted, because all the domains get deleted at I think it's 11 a.m. PST, they all get opened up for anyone to come in and register. So all these different softwares, or these different drop catching providers, try and hit the central register, try and hit their own registrar or the central registry to try and grab this, register this domain before anybody else takes it, before any other drop catching service takes it. So if you're the only person who's registered to drop catch it, then you get it immediately. This is something you can do manually also, but it's really going to be really hard to time. So that's why these drop catching services come in. You need to because their softwares are configured to ping for the domain and register it at that at exactly the right moment before any other software takes it, which is why they charge you a fees as well. So that's what happens in the drop catching phase after a domain is deleted. Now suppose nobody wants to drop catch it, it's not worth anyone's while, then the domain just stays deleted. It stays in the deletion. It gets deleted and it goes into the available phase, and that's what's called the expired domain. It becomes an expired domain. Anyone can come in and register that domain for a basic fees, for the basic registration fees only. There's no other fees. There's no drop catching fees. There's no auction or anything. So you get it really cheap. But the domain has dropped out from the central registry once, and therefore it loses its age. And Google does look at that factor. So you lose your domain age. So there could be a domain that was 10 years old and everything, and you're really excited, but it'll lose its age when you go and register it after it gets deleted fully and becomes an expired domain. However, it will maintain its link, some of its if it's got backlinks coming to it, it'll not lose its link juice, link power, ability to pass link juice down, but it will lose its age. and that's one of the factors. So then that so that results in the link juice ability being reduced, because all these factors, you got to look at all the factors put together. Okay, so that's about what I have to say about the life cycle of a domain. I hope you understood this particular video, everything I said. If there's anything you haven't understood, feel free to ask me, or visit the domain Sherpa, that's domain SHERPA.com page on this, because they've done a wonderful explanation. And if you're going to be serious about building PBNs, I highly recommend you understand the entire life cycle of a domain. I'll see you in the next video.